She was sleeping on the cold concrete of the town square, with her two children clinging to her body, when a man stopped and said something that would change everything forever. Can you imagine the despair of a mother who doesn't even have a roof to put over her children's heads, shivering in the dead of night while the entire town sleeps in their warm beds? This actually happened in November 1978, in the rural heartland of Missouri, in a small town called Oak Creek. Before I continue this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button down below, because what happened between this woman and this rancher will move you in a way you never imagined. What started as a gesture of compassion in the middle of the night didn't just transform her destiny, but created a family where before there was only loneliness and grief. And tell me in the comments, which city are you watching this story from? I love knowing where these narratives reach and how many different homes they touch. The early morning of November 14th, 1978, was especially bitter for that time of year. A cutting wind swept through the deserted streets of Oak Creek, a small town nestled between cornfields and cattle pastures deep in the Midwest. At 3:20 in the morning, the town square was completely empty, silent, illuminated only by the weak yellow glow of a solitary street lamp near the church. The cold was that damp kind that seeps into your bones, makes your joints ache, and turns every breath into a cloud of white vapor. Sarah Miller was awake. How could sleep be possible in that situation? She was sitting on the wooden park bench, leaning against the hard slats, her body curled up trying to generate some heat. On her left, Tommy slept fitfully, tossing and turning, shivering even under the thin jacket she had draped over him. On her right, Lily was in her lap, her small head resting against her mother's chest, little fingers gripping Sarah's blouse as if she were afraid of being torn away. The girl was only 3 years old. She had the restless sleep of someone who feels cold, hunger and fear. Sarah stared into nothingness. Her eyes were dry. She had no tears left. She had cried so much in the last few hours that now only an immense emptiness remained, an exhaustion that went beyond the body. It was an exhaustion of the soul. How had she ended up here? How had a 32-year-old woman, hard-working, honest, a dedicated mother, ended up sleeping on a park bench with her children? The answer lay in the last 8 months. 8 months since Robert had left. Robert Miller, the man she had been married to for 9 years, the father of her children, the man she had loved with everything she had. Sarah still remembered that morning in March as if it were yesterday. She had woken up early, as always, made coffee, checked if the kids were still asleep. When she went back to the bedroom to wake Robert, she found only a note on the made bed. He hadn't even slept at home. The note contained few words, written in haste, the handwriting slanted and messy. "Sarah, I can't take it anymore. I owe a lot of people. I need to disappear. You'll be better off without me. Take care of the kids." He didn't even sign his name. Sarah had read it 3 times before she understood. Then she had run to the wardrobe, opened the drawer where they kept their savings in an old cookie tin. Empty. Completely empty. Robert had taken everything. Every cent she had saved washing clothes, hemming dresses for the ladies in town, doing odd cleaning jobs, $250, a fortune to her. Enough to pay 3 months of rent. Gone. But the worst hadn't been the money. The worst had been discovering the debts in the days that followed. Robert owed money at the bar. He owed the grocery store. He owed the mechanic at the garage. He even owed loan sharks. People Sarah didn't even know began banging on her door, demanding payment, threatening, saying that if Robert had vanished, his wife had to pay up. She tried to explain she knew nothing, that she had been deceived too. No one wanted to listen. A husband's debt is a family debt, they said. Sarah had sold everything of value. The old sewing machine that was her livelihood, the few pieces of furniture in the small apartment they rented in a tenement on Elm Street, her wedding jewelry, a simple gold band and a brooch that had belonged to her mother. With the money, she paid off the most urgent debts, the ones where creditors threatened to go to the police, the ones involving dangerous people. She was left with nothing, just clothes, a pot, some plates. She began to work like a mad woman. She took any job, washed clothes at dawn, sewed at night after the children slept, cleaned houses during the day while leaving Tommy and Lily with Mrs. Higgins, an elderly neighbor who charged little to watch the kids. Sarah slept 4 hours a night, ate once a day, so there would be food left for the children. She lost 15 pounds in 2 months, developed a cough that wouldn't go away. Her hands were raw from scrubbing clothes against the washboard. Even so, she couldn't scrape together enough money. The rent for the apartment was $60 a month, cheap by the town's standards, but too expensive for her. In April, she was late. The landlord, Mr. Henderson, a 60-year-old man with a protruding belly and hard eyes, said he'd give her a week. She managed to pay. In May, she was late again. This time he gave no grace period, just said if she didn't pay by June 10th, he'd put her things on the street. June arrived. Sarah had managed to save only $40. She begged Mr. Henderson. She knelt in front of him with the children beside her and asked for 1 more month. The man looked at her without any compassion. "Sarah, I have other people interested in this apartment," he said with a tired voice, as if he were doing her a favor just by explaining. "Folks who pay on time. You've been behind for months. I ain't the bank to be giving out credit. On June 15th, you get out, or I'll have the boys remove your stuff." She tried to find another place, knocked on every door she knew. No one rented to a single woman with 2 small children, a woman abandoned by her husband, even less so. It was as if she carried a contagious disease. People looked with pity, shook their heads, but closed their doors. Sarah went to the church, spoke with Pastor Williams. The pastor was a good man, 60-something, white hair, kind eyes. He listened, made a pained face, but said the parsonage had no room. He gave her $5 from the collection box. "It's all I can do right now, child," he said, touching her shoulder. "I'll pray for you all." June 15th came. Mr. Henderson appeared at 7 in the morning with 2 large men. Sarah had her suitcases ready. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing men carrying out her things. She left with dignity, a suitcase in each hand, Tommy holding the hem of her skirt, Lily on her hip. "Where are you all going?" asked a neighbor from her doorway. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't know how to answer. She spent the first 3 days at Mrs. Higgins's house, the same woman who watched the children. But Mrs. Higgins lived in a 1-room efficiency, slept on a mattress on the floor, barely had food for herself. On the 3rd day, gently, she said she couldn't do it anymore. Sarah understood. There was no room for resentment. The woman had done what she could. She tried sheltering at other acquaintances' homes. Everyone had excuses. Husband won't allow it. House is too small. Mother-in-law living with us. Sick child. Sarah began to understand she was alone in the world in a way she had never experienced before. That loneliness wasn't just physical. It was social, human. It was as if she had ceased to exist as a person worthy of help. In the following days, she improvised. She slept one night in the storage room behind the grocery store after Mr. Wallace, the owner, took pity on her. But only one night. "I can't risk it, Sarah," he said the next morning. "If the health inspector finds out someone is sleeping here, I lose my license." She thanked him for the night. It was already more than most were willing to give. She slept 2 nights in the tiny back room of Mrs. Gable's house, a laundress who needed help. In exchange for the roof, Sarah washed clothes from dawn until night. But Mrs. Gable had a violent son-in-law who showed up drunk in the middle of the night, and she was afraid something might happen to the children. On the 3rd day, she gathered the courage and said it was better for Sarah to leave. That was how Sarah ended up in the square. No options, no money, no place to go. On the first night, November 13th, she barely slept. She sat on the bench, hugging the children, alert to every sound, every shadow, every movement. Tommy asked why they were there. Sarah invented that it was an adventure, that they were going camping, that in the morning they would find a better place. The boy, too smart for his 6 years, didn't believe her, but he didn't argue. Now it was the second night. November 14th. Much colder than the one before. Sarah was too exhausted to feel shame. During the day she had tried to find work. She had gone to the market, offered to carry groceries for the ladies in exchange for some change. She managed $1.25, bought a loaf of bread, which cost 50 cents, gave it to the children to eat. She herself ate only a small piece. Her stomach had already gotten used to being empty. In the afternoon, she had tried to speak with the mayor. The secretary didn't even let her in. "The mayor doesn't see anyone without an appointment," said the middle-aged woman with a perm and exaggerated red lipstick. Sarah explained the situation. The secretary gave a condescending smile. "Honey, everybody has problems," she said. "You need to figure it out. Go find your family." Sarah had no family. Mother died when she was 15. Father died 3 years later, only child. Robert had been everything she had, and Robert had run away. Now, at 3:30 in the morning, sitting on that frozen bench, Sarah felt she had hit rock bottom. She didn't know what to do, where to go, how to feed her children, how to protect them from the cold. The sensation of failure was physical, a weight on her chest that made it hard to breathe, that made her heart beat too slowly. She looked at Tommy, shivering in his sleep, then at Lily, clinging to her. The children trusted that she would fix this. But how? For the first time in her life, Sarah understood what real despair meant. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't fear, it was the complete absence of a way out, of hope, of a visible future. It was looking forward and seeing nothing but darkness. She closed her eyes, squeezed Lily against her chest, and for the first time since it all started, thought that maybe it would have been better never to have existed. The thought came fast, dark, and it scared her. "No," she thought forcefully. "I can't think like that. The kids need me." But the thought had already taken root, and the more she tried not to think it, the more it grew. That was when she heard the sound. A truck engine. The unmistakable noise of an old vehicle, motor rumbling, gears shifting. Sarah opened her eyes. The town square was still dark, but yellow beams were approaching down Main Street. Pickup truck headlights. The vehicle slowed down as it passed the square. Sarah felt her entire body tense up. A lone man, middle of the night, vulnerable woman in the park. All the bad stories she had ever heard raced through her mind in a second. The truck stopped, engine still running. Sarah couldn't see who was inside because of the glare of the headlights. Her heart raced. She squeezed Lily tighter, reached out to pull Tommy closer. If she needed to run, she would run. It didn't matter where. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, somewhere in his 40s, broad shoulders of someone who works the land. He wore a brimmed work hat, a flannel shirt with sleeves rolled up despite the cold-worn jeans, leather work boots. He had a few days' stubble and the tired expression of someone who woke up too early. He closed the door slowly, as if not wanting to make noise, and began walking toward the bench. Sarah wanted to get up, but her legs didn't obey. She wanted to scream, but her throat was closed. She just stayed there, hugging the children, watching the man approach. He stopped about 10 feet away, stood there looking at her, at the children, at the battered suitcases beside the bench. The streetlight illuminated his face from the side. It wasn't an expression of threat, it was something different. Surprise, concern, maybe pity. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked finally. His voice was deep, measured, with a soft rural drawl that revealed years living in the country. Sarah didn't answer immediately. She was calculating. Should she lie, say she was just waiting for someone, pretend she had a place to go, but what was the point? He had eyes. He was seeing the situation. A woman with 2 kids, old suitcases sitting in the square in the middle of the night on one of the coldest days of the year. "I am," she answered finally, her voice coming out hoarse, low. The man took a step closer. Tommy woke up with the movement, looked at the stranger with eyes wide with fear. Sarah put her hand on the boy's head, a gesture that said, "Stay quiet. Don't move." The man noticed the fear and stopped where he was. "Sorry to bother you," he said, taking off his hat, a gesture of respect. "I saw y'all here when I passed by earlier, around 5 in the afternoon. Thought you were just waiting on someone. But now, coming back from town, I see you're still here." He paused, looked at the children again, then back at Sarah. "Do you have a place to stay?" The direct question, without beating around the bush, caught Sarah off guard. She could have lied, should have lied. But the exhaustion, the cold, the accumulated despair of the last months, everything collapsed at once. She looked at that stranger and simply shook her head. "No, I don't." The man remained silent for a long moment. Sarah saw his jaw tighten, his eyes look away, as if he were wrestling with some internal decision. When he looked back at her, there was determination on his face. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah," she replied. "Sarah Miller." "And the kids?" "Tommy and Lily," she said, touching each one's head. "My children. Vincent Turner," he said, introducing himself. "Folks call me Vince. I have a farm about 8 miles from here, Clearwater Farm." He hesitated, ran a hand through his hair, put his hat back on. "Look, I don't know your situation. I don't want to be out of line. But you can't stay here in the square with these kids. It's too cold. Frost is coming by morning. They're gonna get sick." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She knew that. She knew she couldn't stay there, but what else could she do? "I know," she whispered, "but I have nowhere to go. Not right now. I'm looking, but it's hard. People don't want a single woman, 2 kids." She stopped, couldn't continue. Vince looked at her for another long moment. Then he said something Sarah would never forget for the rest of her life. "Come to my farm," he said with a firm but gentle voice. "You won't sleep on the ground another night." Sarah froze completely. She was sure she had heard wrong. "What?" the man repeated, this time slower, as if he wanted to be sure she understood every word. "Come work at my farm," Vince said. "I need someone to cook, clean the house, that sort of thing. I live alone there, the house is big, got empty rooms. You can stay in one of them. I bring groceries from town every week. You cook for me, take care of the house, and in exchange, you have a place to live with the kids. Food, too." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was too tempting, too dangerous. She looked at that man, trying to read his intentions. Why would he do this? A single man offering a home to a strange woman in the middle of the night. All the stories of abuse, violence, exploitation she had ever heard raced through her mind. Vince noticed the hesitation. "I understand why you'd be suspicious, ma'am," he said calmly. "You don't know me. But I swear on the memory of my late wife that I have no bad intentions. I just can't see children freezing on the street." He pointed to the truck. "If you want, you can go talk to Pastor Williams tomorrow. He knows me, knows my family. You can ask about me. If after that you don't want to go, that's fine. But at least for tonight, let me take y'all to a warm place." Sarah looked at Tommy, shivering beside her. Looked at Lily, still sleeping fitfully in her lap. Looked at the old suitcases with everything that remained of her life. Looked back at Vince, standing there with his hat in his hand, waiting for an answer. And then she made the riskiest and most desperate decision of her life. She nodded. "All right," she said with a voice that barely came out. "We'll go." Vince seemed relieved. "Good," he said, adjusting his hat. "I'll get the bags." He picked up the 2 old suitcases as if they weighed nothing and carried them to the truck bed. Came back, held out a hand to Sarah. Let's go. You and the kids ride up front with me. It's warmer. Sarah stood up, legs numb from the cold and sitting so long, held Lily in her arms, gave her other hand to Tommy. Vince opened the passenger door. The inside of the cab was still warm from his drive, smelled of old leather, spilled coffee, earth. Sarah climbed in with difficulty, settled Lily on her lap, pulled Tommy to sit between her and Vince. The boy was tense, scared. Vince walked around, got in the driver's side, closed the door. The sound shut out the cold from outside immediately. He turned the heater to the max. Hot air began to blow from the vents with the noise of an old fan. "Let's wait for it to warm up a bit before we go," Vince said. He looked at Tommy. "So, buddy, what's your name again?" "Tommy," replied the boy, with a thin, suspicious voice. "Nice to meet you, Tommy. You like horses?" The boy nodded timidly. "Then you're gonna like the farm. I got 3 horses. Tomorrow I'll show you if your mama lets me." Sarah looked at Vince sideways. The man was trying to make Tommy comfortable, show he wasn't a threat. It was a kind gesture. She felt something strange in her chest, a mix of gratitude and suspicion. Couldn't let her guard down, didn't know this man. But at the same time, for the first time in weeks, she was inside a warm place. And that was already more than she had had. Vince put the truck in gear. They left the square, took the dirt road that led out of town. The night was dark, only the headlights illuminating the potholed path. Sarah looked out the window, watching Oak Creek disappear behind them. Was she doing the right thing? Was she putting her children in even greater danger? But then she felt Lily relax in her lap, her little body finally warming up, her breathing calming down. And she thought that any risk was better than letting her children die of cold in the square. The farm was further than Sarah had imagined. 8 miles on a dirt road seemed much longer. They passed other farms, closed gates, dark houses, passed through a stretch of dense woods where the night sounds were loud, crickets, frogs, some larger animal moving in the brush. Tommy squeezed his mother's hand tightly. "It's okay, baby," whispered Sarah. "We're safe." Today, Vince drove in silence, focused on the bad road. Every now and then he glanced at them, as if checking if they were okay. Sarah took the chance to observe him better. Face marked by the sun, wrinkles around the eyes of someone who works outdoors. Large, calloused hands holding the steering wheel firmly. Gold wedding band on his left ring finger. She remembered he had mentioned a late wife. Widower, then. How long had it been? Why did he keep wearing the ring? Finally they arrived. A wooden gate with a metal sign reading Clearwater Farm appeared in the headlights. Vince got out, opened the gate, drove through, got out again to close it. Another quarter-mile of private drive, and then the house appeared. It was a large, older construction, Victorian farmhouse style, 2 stories, wide wraparound porch, tall windows, shingled roof, white paint peeling in some places, garden half abandoned in the front, weeds grown too tall. Vince parked near the porch. "We're here," he said, turning off the engine. "Welcome to Clearwater Farm." He got out, walked around, opened the door for Sarah. She climbed down with Lily still in her arms, Tommy clutching her skirt. Vince grabbed the suitcases, walked up the 3 steps of the porch, unlocked the front door, left the key hanging in the lock. "Come on in," he said, turning on the light. Sarah entered slowly, looking at everything closely. The living room was large, high ceilings, old heavy furniture, cracked leather sofa, armchair, bookshelf, coffee table with a lace doily. Smelled of a closed house, dust, loneliness. There was a portrait on the wall of a young couple on their wedding day. Vince and a pretty woman in a white dress. Sarah looked away quickly. "Kitchen's through there," Vince said, pointing to a door on the left. "Bathroom under the stairs. Bedrooms upstairs." He started climbing the wooden staircase, which creaked with every step. Sarah followed him, holding Lily, who had finally woken up and was looking at everything with big, curious eyes. On the second floor, a hallway with 4 doors. Vince opened the third one. "This room here's been empty for a long time," he said, turning on the light. "But it's got a bed, wardrobe, that sort of thing. Tomorrow you can fix it up better." The room was simple. Double bed with a faded floral quilt, dark wood wardrobe, dresser, window with heavy fabric curtains, clean but with that air of a place no one uses. Vince put the suitcases on the floor. "Extra sheets and blankets are in the closet," he said. "If you need anything else, my room is the first one down the hall. Just holler." He looked at the children. "Did you all eat today?" Sarah felt her face burn with shame. "We had bread this afternoon," she said quietly. Vince nodded without judgment. "Let me heat something up. Should be some pot roast and potatoes from supper still in the pot." He left the room, went down the stairs. Sarah heard the noise of pans in the kitchen. She sat on the bed slowly, still not believing she was there. The bed was soft, real. It wasn't a park bench. It wasn't hard ground. It was a real bed. Tommy sat beside her. "Mama, are we going to stay here?" the boy asked. "I don't know, honey," Sarah answered honestly. "For now, yes. Let's see how tomorrow goes. But you have to promise Mama one thing." "What?" asked Tommy. "You don't leave my side, okay? Neither you nor your sister. No matter what happens, you stay with me." The boy nodded seriously, understanding there was something important in what his mother wasn't saying. Vince returned 15 minutes later with a tray. There were 2 deep bowls with roast beef, potatoes, carrots, and gravy. "Ain't much," he said, placing the tray on the dresser, "but it's hot. Eat up." Sarah looked at the food and felt her eyes sting. How long had it been since she saw real food? "Thank you," she managed to say. Vince nodded. "You're welcome. I'll let you rest. If you need anything, you know where to find me. Good night." And he left, closing the door slowly. Sarah fed Tommy and Lily first, watching the 2 eat with a desperate hunger that broke her heart. When they finished, she ate what was left. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Then she took the children to the bathroom, helped them wash their faces and hands. They went back to the room. She took off their coats, the heaviest clothes, tucked the 2 into bed. Tommy passed out in minutes. Lily took a little longer, but soon she slept too. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed looking at her children. Finally they were warm. Finally they had slept in a bed. Finally they had eaten. She should be relieved, but instead she felt fear. Fear of what she had just done. Fear of the unknown. Fear of that strange man, Vince, who had appeared as a savior but remained a complete mystery. She got up, went to the window, opened the curtains slightly. Outside, complete darkness. Not even stars visible, just pitch black. The farm was isolated. If something happened, no one would hear. No one would know. Sarah felt her stomach knot. Had she made the right choice? Or had she just put her children in an even worse situation? But then she remembered the cold of the square, the hard bench, the despair, and thought that maybe, just maybe, there were good people in the world. Maybe Vince was one of them. She was going to find out. She had to find out, because now there was no turning back. Sarah closed the curtain, went back to bed, lay down beside the children, pulled the blanket over the 3 of them, and for the first time in months slept for more than 2 hours straight. Sarah woke up startled. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was different, higher than the tenement. The light coming through the window was brighter, softer. The mattress beneath her was too soft. Then everything came back at once, the square, the cold, the man, Vince, the farm. She sat up too fast and dizziness hit her hard. When was the last time she had slept a full night? Looked to the side. Tommy and Lily were still sleeping, wrapped in the blanket, faces finally relaxed. Through the window, daylight was already strong. What time was it? Sarah got up, went to the window, opened the curtain completely. The view took her breath away. Clearwater Farm was much bigger than it had seemed in the darkness. From the second-floor window, she saw everything. Huge pasture stretching as far as the eye could see, dark green grass swaying with the gentle morning wind, wooden fences dividing the fields. Black and white cattle grazing peacefully in the distance must have been 20 or 30 head. Wooden corral near a large red barn. 3 horses in the smaller paddock, a brown one, a black one, and a spotted one. Chicken coop on the right side of the house, chickens pecking loose around the yard. A garden half abandoned behind the coop, weeds growing among the vegetables. And beyond all that, dense woods surrounding the property like a green embrace. It was beautiful, isolated, quiet in a way the town never was. The only sound Sarah heard was the wind, the birds, the distant lowing of cattle. No noise of people, cars, city, just nature. She felt something strange in her chest. Couldn't decide if it was peace or loneliness. She looked at the old clock hanging on the wall. 8:20 in the morning, too late. If she was there to work, she should have woken up hours ago. Sarah left the room carefully so as not to wake the children, went down the stairs in silence. The house was quiet. Had Vince already left? She went to the kitchen. The kitchen was large, functional, full of old pans hanging on hooks. A black ironwood stove, stone sink, solid wood table in the center with 6 chairs. Large window overlooking the backyard. Everything clean, but with that air of a place used by a solitary person who cooks only to survive. No feminine touch, no flowers, no colorful towels or decorations. It was a widower's kitchen. Sarah saw there was fresh coffee in the thermos on the stove. Beside it, a note scribbled in slanted masculine handwriting on a piece of paper. Good morning. Went out early to check the herd. Back at lunch. Make yourself at home. If you need anything, Hank is in the barn. He works here and lives in the tenant house. Vince. So there were more people on the farm. Sarah felt a strange relief. They weren't completely isolated. Just her, the kids, and Vince. There was at least one other person. That was good. Safer, maybe. She poured coffee into an aluminum mug, drank slowly, feeling the hot liquid go down and wake her whole body. Strong coffee, brewed well, the way a farm worker drinks it. When was the last time she had real coffee, not watercolored like coffee? Sarah didn't remember. She began to explore the house with more attention. The living room had that wedding portrait on the wall. Vince must have been in his 20s in the photo. The bride was beautiful. Dark hair pinned in a bun, open smile, simple but well-made dress. Happy. Sarah looked at the date engraved on a small gold plaque under the frame. May 14th, 1960. 18 years ago. Married that long and she had died. How? The note the night before mentioned a late wife but didn't say when or how. There were other, smaller photos on the shelf. Vince, younger, beside an older man, probably his father. Vince with a group of men in front of the barn, all holding tools. A day of hard work. Vince and his wife again, she pregnant, belly big, hand over her stomach, shy smile. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. Pregnant. Where was the child now? She went up to the second floor again. 3 bedrooms besides the one where she had slept, opened the first door carefully. Master bedroom, carved wooden bed, large wardrobe, dresser with mirror, window with lace curtain, quilt made with military perfection. Men's clothes hanging in the slightly open closet smelled of lavender and loneliness. Vince's room. She closed the door quickly, feeling she had invaded private space. Opened the second door. Small office. Desk, chair, shelves with farm ledger books, almanac, notebooks, papers organized in piles, window looking out to the pastures, functional room, no decoration. Hesitated at the last door. The doorknob was dusty, as if no one had touched it in a long time. Sarah turned it slowly. The door opened with a loud creak, and then she saw it. A nursery. Wooden crib in the corner, mobile of little lambs hanging above, still, dusty. Small dresser with a changing table. Shelf with some stuffed animals, brown bear, white rabbit, yellow duck, tiny clothes folded on the dresser, onesies, booties, socks, too small to be real, smell of stalled time, of hope that was never realized. Sarah understood everything at once. The pregnant wife in the photo, the room set up with love, the death, the pain. Vince had lost his wife and child, probably in childbirth, and he couldn't touch that room since then. Had left everything exactly as it was, a sanctuary to the pain he couldn't overcome. She left the room quickly, closed the door carefully. Her heart beat strong, aching. Now she understood why Vince lived alone on that huge farm, why the house had an air of emotional abandonment, why he had stopped to help a stranger with children in the square. Maybe it wasn't just kindness. Maybe it was a way to save someone, since he hadn't been able to save his own family. She went back to the room where the children were finally waking up. Lily was whimpering, Tommy rubbing his eyes. "Mama?" called the boy. "I'm here, sweetie," said Sarah, sitting on the bed and hugging them both. "Did you sleep well?" Lily nodded and asked for water. Tommy looked around, confused. "Where are we?" Sarah explained again where they were, who Vince was, what they were going to do there. Tommy listened seriously, processing. "Is he good?" asked the boy. Sarah thought before answering. "I think so," she said honestly, "but we're gonna keep our eyes open, okay? We're gonna work here, help out, but always together, never alone." The boy agreed. After taking them to the bathroom and changing Lily, Sarah went down with them to the kitchen, made oatmeal for them, found bread in the tin, spread butter. The children ate with an appetite that broke and healed her heart at the same time. Broke it because it revealed how much hunger they had endured. Healed it because finally they had something to eat. She was finishing washing the dishes when she heard the sound of a door. Vince entered through the back door, taking off his muddy boots before stepping into the kitchen. "Good morning," he said, taking off his hat upon seeing Sarah. "Sleep well?" "I did, thank you," replied Sarah, suddenly shy, not knowing how to act. Vince looked at Tommy and Lily sitting at the table. "And you two? Sleep well?" Tommy nodded silently. Lily just stared with big eyes. Vince went to the sink, washed his hands, poured coffee for himself. "So," he said, leaning against the counter and looking at Sarah, "I'll explain how it works here. The farm is big, but I only have one steady hand, Hank, who takes care of the cattle and heavy maintenance. He lives in the tenant house with his family, wife and 2 grown kids. Good people. You'll meet 'em. His wife is Martha." He took a sip of coffee. "The house has been needing a woman's touch for a long time. My routine is wake up at 5, have coffee, go out to the pastures, back at noon for lunch, then out again until 5 or 6 in the evening. What I need is someone to cook 3 meals, keep the house clean, take care of the chickens, collect eggs, that sort of thing. You think you can do that?" Sarah nodded quickly. "I can, sir." Vince looked uncomfortable. "Don't need to call me sir," he said. "Vince is fine. How old are you?" 32, replied Sarah. "And you?" she asked before thinking if it was appropriate. 41, said Vince without taking offense. "Widower for 3.5 years. Heavy silence fell between them. Sarah wanted to ask what had happened, but didn't have the courage. Vince seemed to understand the unasked question. "She died in childbirth," he said with a neutral voice, without emotion, as if he had told that so many times the words had lost their weight. "Gabriella. It was a complication no one foresaw. Hemorrhage. The boy didn't survive either." He looked out the window, jaw tight. It was in May of 75. Been 3.5 years. "I'm so sorry," said Sarah, softly, sincere. Vince shrugged, a gesture that tried to seem indifferent but wasn't. "That's life, right? We keep going." He finished the coffee in one gulp, put the mug in the sink. "Well, let me show you the property. The kids can come too. That way, y'all know everything." The four went out the back door. The November sun was high but weak, a mild winter light. Vince took them to the chicken coop first. There were about 15 chickens, 3 roosters, 2 ducks. "Hens lay every day," explained Vince. "Just collect the eggs morning and afternoon. Got to be careful with that red rooster there. He's mean, he pecks." Tommy eyed the rooster with respect, mixed with fear. Then they went to the barn, large red wooden structure with a tin roof. Inside were tools, sacks of feed, bales of hay, an old tractor covered with a tarp. In the back of the barn, Vince called out, "Hank, you there?" A man of about 50 appeared from behind a stack of hay. Short, stocky, skin tanned by the sun, grey moustache. "Hey, boss," he said, wiping his hands on his pants. Vince made the introductions. "Hank, this is Sarah and her kids, Tommy and Lily. She's going to be working here at the house from now on. Sarah, this is Hank." Hank greeted with a firm handshake. "Pleasure, Miss Sarah. Anything you need, just holler. My house is right over there past the pastures, little greenhouse. My wife, Martha, is going to love meeting you. Been a while since there was another woman around here." Sarah thanked him. Vince continued the tour, showed the abandoned garden. "My wife used to take care of this," he said with a different voice, lower. "After she passed, I didn't have the heart to keep it up. There's some stuff still growing, collard greens, winter squash, but it's all kind of overgrown. If you want to tend to it, feel free." Sarah looked at the garden. It could be recovered. Must have been beautiful when cared for. They went to the pastures. Vince explained about the cattle. 23 head of Angus, he said, pointing. "Sell to the meat plant twice a year. It's what keeps the farm running. Also got the horses. That brown one is Thunder, the black one is Midnight, the spotted one is Spot." "You ride?" he asked. Sarah shook her head. "Never ridden." "Then you'll learn," said Vince. "Here we're far from everything. Having a horse is a necessity, not a luxury." Tommy was fascinated. "Mama, can I touch the horse?" asked the boy. Vince smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah saw on his face. "Sure, son, come here." He opened the paddock gate, went in with Tommy, approached the spotted horse. "This here's the gentlest," he said. "Pet him slow, that's it." Tommy touched the horse's muzzle with trembling fingers, eyes wide with wonder. The horse snorted softly, accepted the affection. Vince picked Tommy up, lifted him until he was at the height of the animal's neck. "Wanna sit?" Tommy nodded excitedly. Vince put the boy on top of the horse, held him steady. Sarah felt her chest tighten, seeing her son smile for the first time in months. They spent the whole morning getting to know every corner of the farm, the creek that cut through the property on the east boundary, clear water running over smooth stones, the dense woods in the back, where Vince said there was game, but also danger. "Never go in there alone," he warned. "There's snakes, wild animals. Only with someone who knows the woods." When they returned to the house, it was past noon. Vince looked at Sarah. "Don't worry about lunch today," he said. "I'll heat up yesterday's food. But starting tomorrow, I'm counting on you, all right?" Sarah agreed. She wanted to start working right away, prove she deserved to be there, that she wasn't a burden, that she could pay for the roof and food with work. The four had lunch at the kitchen table, roast beef sandwiches, leftover potatoes. Farm food, honest and filling. The children ate twice. Vince watched discreetly, seeming satisfied that there was food being enjoyed in that house that for so long had fed only one. After lunch, Vince went back to the pastures. Sarah stayed in the house with the kids, starting to explore better, understand where everything was, found bed linens in the hall closet, changed the sheets in the room where they had slept, hung the used ones on the line out back. Swept the whole house, mopped the kitchen. Tommy helped carrying small things. Lily hindered more than helped, but Sarah let her do it, needed the girl to feel she was contributing too. In the afternoon, Sarah went to the coop to collect eggs. Found 9, still warm, heavy in her hand, took them in a basket to the kitchen, was walking back when she saw a woman approaching the house up the path. Short, plump, about 60 years old, grey hair in a bun, simple floral dress, comfortable shoes, carried a bundle in her arms. "Hi there, honey," called the woman, waving. "You must be Sarah. I'm Martha, Hank's wife. Came to meet you." Sarah went to meet her, shy. Martha hugged her before Sarah could even speak, a tight hug from someone who doesn't know you but doesn't care. "What a joy to have another woman here," said Martha, pulling away and looking Sarah up and down. "Vince has needed someone for a long time. A man alone can't handle a house right." "Brought this for you," said Martha, handing over the bundle. Sarah opened it. It was a pound cake, still warm, smelling of vanilla and butter. "My God, thank you," said Sarah, feeling her eyes sting. "You didn't have to." "Of course I did," replied Martha, entering the house without ceremony. "Came to welcome you. Where are the kids?" Tommy and Lily appeared curious. Martha melted. "Lord have mercy, aren't they precious? Come here, give me a hug." Lily, less shy than her brother, went straight into the woman's arms. Tommy stayed further back, but accepted the pat on the head. Martha sat with them at the kitchen table, cut generous slices of cake, served it with hot coffee. They ate while talking. Martha told stories of the farm, how she and Hank had worked there for 15 years, how Gabriella was beloved, careful. What a pity it was what happened. How Vince had closed himself off after, becoming a shadow of himself. "He's a good man, you know," said Martha seriously. "Suffered a lot, got lost. But he's got a good heart. You'll see." Sarah listened to everything, absorbing the information, trying to put together the puzzle of the man who had offered refuge without knowing her. Martha was a fountain of knowledge. Talked non-stop, hands constantly moving, easy laugh. Sarah liked her immediately. For the first time in months, she talked to someone without fear of judgment, without feeling she needed to defend herself or explain herself. When Martha left, dusk was falling. Sarah began to prepare dinner, found a chicken in the freezer, seasoned it, put it to roast, made rice, fresh green beans in the pressure cooker, salad with lettuce from the garden that was still good. Was frying potatoes when Vince entered. He stopped at the kitchen door, just observing. Sarah working at the stove, Tommy setting the table without anyone asking, Lily playing on the floor with a wooden spoon. Smell of home-cooked food filling the house. Something passed across Vince's face, a quick emotion he controlled. The house was alive again. "Smells good," he said finally. Sarah looked back, smiled shyly. "It's simple, but I hope you like it." "I'll like it," said Vince. "For sure I'll like it." He went to wash his hands, change clothes. When he returned, the table was set. Food served in bowls like a real family, not a man eating alone straight from the pot. They dined with light conversation. Vince asked if the kids liked the farm. Tommy spoke excitedly about the horses. Lily didn't talk much, just ate and smiled. Vince said the next day he needed to go into town to get supplies. If Sarah wanted to go along, make a list of what was needed for the house, she could go, or she could stay. Whatever she preferred. Sarah thought. Part of her wanted to go, see other people, not be isolated right off the bat. But another part, a bigger part, was afraid. Afraid of running into someone from Oak Creek. Afraid of questions. Afraid of judgment about her situation. "I think it's better if I stay," she said. "I'll make a list and you bring it. If you don't mind." Vince agreed. "No problem." After dinner, Vince retired to the office. Sarah bathed the children, put them to sleep. Returned to the kitchen, washed all the dishes, cleaned the stove, swept the floor. When she finished, the kitchen shone. She sat at the table with a cup of tea, looking out the window at the darkness outside. Stars were more visible here than in town. Clear skies sprinkled with bright dots, thought about how life had changed in 24 hours. Yesterday she was sleeping in the square, desperate, without a future. Today she was on a farm, working with a roof over her head, food on the table. She should be relieved, happy even, but she still felt fear rooted in her chest, fear that it was temporary, fear that Vince would change his mind, fear of his intentions toward her, fear of being evicted again. Vince appeared in the kitchen looking for water, saw Sarah sitting alone. "Can't sleep?" he asked, filling a glass. Sarah shook her head. "Just thinking," she said. Vince sat in the chair opposite. "About what?" Sarah hesitated, then decided to be honest. "About how to thank you for helping me," she said, looking at him. "I had nowhere else to go, literally. If you hadn't stopped yesterday, I don't know what would have happened." Vince looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same," he murmured. "No," said Sarah firmly. "They wouldn't have. I knocked on every door in that town. They all closed. You were the only one who stopped." Vince looked at her for a long moment. "I lost my family," he said finally, voice low. "Gabriella and my son. I couldn't save them. Maybe I'm trying to make up for that somehow. I don't know." He rubbed his face, tired. "But when I saw you there with those kids, sleeping on the ground, I couldn't just drive by. Couldn't." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "You had no obligation to save your wife," she said gently. "Sometimes things happen, and there's nothing we can do." Vince didn't answer, just looked at the table, lost in memories Sarah couldn't see but imagined were painful. "Can I ask you something?" said Sarah quietly. Vince nodded. "Why do you still wear your ring?" He looked at the gold band on his finger, twisted it absently. "Habit, I guess," he said. "Or maybe because taking it off seems like admitting it's over for good, that she's really gone, and I'm not ready for that yet." Sarah understood. Grief had no timeline. Each person took the time they needed. "And you?" asked Vince, changing the focus. "Your husband. What happened?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Robert," she said, the name bitter on her tongue. "Ran off. Took everything we had, left debts and vanished. It's been 8 months. I don't know where he is. I don't want to know." She told the whole story, the debts, the months fighting alone, the eviction, everything. Vince listened in silence, face getting harder with every detail. "What kind of man abandons his own family?" he said when Sarah finished. There was real anger in his voice. "I don't understand that." Sarah shrugged wearily. "The kind I married, apparently. I didn't know who he really was. Thought I knew, but I didn't." Silence fell between them again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of mutual understanding, of two people who had suffered, who carried different but equally heavy pains. "Well," said Vince, standing up. "Tomorrow I wake up early. You should rest too," Sarah agreed. "Good night, Vince." "Good night, Sarah." The days began to form a routine. Sarah woke up at 5:30 before the sun even fully rose, made strong coffee, oatmeal, sometimes fried eggs, toast with butter. Vince came down at 6, drank coffee quickly, went out to the pastures. Sarah spent the morning taking care of the house, the chickens, the children, prepared a hearty lunch that Vince ate at noon. Afternoon was more of the same. Cleaning, caretaking, preparing dinner. Simple routine, but one that brought a strange sensation of normality Sarah hadn't felt in a long time. The children adapted quickly. Tommy explored the farm with insatiable curiosity, always asking questions, always wanting to help. Vince had infinite patience with the boy, teaching him about plants, animals, how the farm worked. Lily stuck to Sarah, but slowly began to open up too. Playing in the yard, chasing chickens, laughing more. Sarah gained weight back. Her cheeks returned to having color. The circles under her eyes diminished. Her hands began to heal from the wounds of so much heavy labor. She cooked, cleaned, organized, but it was different work. It was work with dignity, not despair. It was work that fed her and her children, that provided a roof, that had recognized value. A week passed, then 2. Sarah began to tend the garden, pulled the weeds, prepared the soil, planted new seeds Vince brought from town. Tomatoes, lettuce, collard greens, carrots, radishes. Watered every day, watched the little plants grow. There was satisfaction in seeing something grow because of her care. Vince changed too, subtly, smiled more, talked more, seemed less lost, less of a shadow. Sometimes Sarah caught him looking out the window with a thoughtful expression and wondered what he was thinking. Other times he sat on the porch after dinner with coffee, just watching the sunset, and there was peace in that moment that didn't exist before. But not everything was perfect. Sarah still had nightmares. Dreamt she was back in the square, penetrating cold, children crying, no one stopping to help. Woke up sweating, heart racing, and took minutes to remember she was safe, that she had a place, that she wasn't alone anymore. In those moments, she looked at Tommy and Lily sleeping beside her and held onto that image like an anchor. If you are liking this story, leave your like and share with someone who needs to believe in new beginnings. On the 18th day, everything changed. Sarah was hanging laundry on the line when she saw an unfamiliar pickup truck coming up the drive. It wasn't Vince's. He was out in the pastures. This one was bigger, newer, a shiny black Ford. It stopped in front of the house. A man stepped out, tall, somewhere in his 30s, clothes too expensive for the country, hair gelled back, mirrored aviator sunglasses. He wore an arrogant expression even before he opened his mouth. "Hello," he said, not taking off his glasses. "You the new help?" Sarah felt an instant dislike. "I'm Sarah," she replied, neither confirming nor denying. "Can I help you?" "Came to see my brother-in-law," the man said. "Is he around?" Sarah pointed toward the pastures. "He's working. Should be back for lunch." The man looked at the house, at Sarah, at the clothes on the line. "So, you live here?" he asked with a tone Sarah didn't appreciate. "I work here," she corrected. He smiled crookedly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I see," he drawled. Vince always did have a soft heart. Before Sarah could respond, Vince appeared coming from the barn. He had seen the truck and came to see who it was. When he saw the man, his expression shut down completely. "Roger," he said, without enthusiasm. "What do you want?" Roger opened his arms. "Is that how you greet your brother-in-law, Vince? Haven't seen each other in months." Vince didn't move to shake hands. "Answer my question," he said with a hard voice. "What do you want?" Roger let his arms drop, finally taking off his glasses. "Came to talk about the farm," he said. "About you. The family is worried." "What family?" Vince asked. "Gabrielle was an only child. Her parents passed away. You're all that's left of her family, and you never worried about me before." Roger sighed, as if dealing with a difficult child. "Vince, you've been alone out here for years. It's not healthy. The farm is too big for you to manage by yourself. I came with a proposal. There's a corporation interested in buying. Good price. You could retire, live comfortably in the city. Forget all this." Vince stood still as stone. "I'm not selling my farm," he said, every word heavy as lead. "My father built this. I grew up here. Gabrielle is buried here. I'm not selling." Roger made a face of impatience. "Vince, be reasonable. What are you going to do here alone? You're withering away. Look at you, living like a ghost in this huge house. No wife, no kids, no future. Sell, take the money, start a new life." "I said no," Vince repeated, voice louder now. "And that's the last time I'm going to say it. You can leave." Roger looked at Sarah, who was standing near the clothesline, trying to be invisible, but hearing everything. "So it's because of her?" he asked with a malicious grin. "Got yourself a little woman to keep the bed warm, and now you think you have a reason to stay?" Vince lunged so fast, Sarah didn't even see it happen. One second he was standing still. The next, he had Roger by the collar of his expensive shirt, slammed against the truck. You don't talk about her like that, Vince hissed with a rage Sarah had never seen. You know nothing about her, nothing about me, nothing about what happens here. Sarah works here. She's an employee. And even if she weren't, it wouldn't be your business. Now get off my property before I throw you off. Roger raised his hands in surrender, but the smirk didn't completely vanish. All right, he said. But you're gonna regret this, Vince. This property is worth a lot of money. There are interested parties, and if you won't sell the easy way, maybe you'll sell the hard way. Vince released him with a shove. Get out, he ordered. Roger got into the truck, started the engine, but before driving off, rolled down the window. Think about what I said, Vince, and look at this situation, he pointed at Sarah with his chin. Single woman living with a widower. You know how folks talk, and they will talk. He drove off, kicking up dust. Vince stood there, breathing heavily, hands clenched into fists. Sarah approached slowly. Is everything okay? She asked. Vince didn't answer immediately. Then he shook his head. Sorry you had to see that, he said. Roger is Gabriel's brother, but they never got along. He always wanted me to sell the farm, thinks he can profit from it somehow. I will never sell. Sarah understood there was more to the story. Can he actually do anything? She asked worriedly. Legally? Vince thought. I don't know, he admitted. The farm is mine, deed is in my name, but Roger has connections, knows people. If he wants to cause trouble, he can. Silence fell between them. Then Vince looked at Sarah with a strange expression. He's right about one thing, he said. People will talk about you living here with me. Single woman, widowed man, same house. They'll invent things. Sarah felt her stomach knot. She had thought about this, but had pushed it to the back of her mind, not wanting to deal with it. Do you want me to leave? She asked, voice small, the fear returning. No, Vince said too quickly. That's not it. You work here. You work well. The house has never been so organized. The kids are happy. I am... He stopped, seemed to realize what he had said, looked embarrassed. What I mean is, you stay. I don't care what people say. Never have. But Sarah knew it wasn't that simple. Gossip in a small town was a deadly weapon. It could destroy reputations, ruin lives. What if people started bad-mouthing Vince because of her? If he lost respect in the community? If this somehow gave ammunition to Roger? I'll think of something, Vince said, as if reading her thoughts. Don't worry right now, let's get lunch. But Sarah did worry. She spent the afternoon restless, thinking about Roger's words. The veiled threat. The insinuation about her and Vince. It was true they lived in the same house. It was true they weren't married or family. To the eyes of any outsider, it looked exactly like what Roger had insinuated. An immoral arrangement. A gold-digging woman. A weak man. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah went down to get water. Vince was in the living room, sitting in the dark, only the weak light of a lamp illuminating the room. Can't sleep? She asked. He shook his head. Thinking, he said. Sarah sat in the armchair opposite him. About what? Vince looked at her for a long time before answering. About how to protect you, he said finally. And me, and this farm. Roger won't give up. He'll come back. And next time he'll bring real trouble. Sarah felt a chill down her spine. What kind of trouble? Vince sighed. I don't know exactly, but I know my brother-in-law. He's persistent and unscrupulous. If he wants me to sell this land, he'll do anything to force me. And you living here, being a single woman, it gives him an angle to use against me. Then I should leave, Sarah said, feeling her heart break even as she spoke. I don't want to cause trouble for you. You helped me when no one else would. I can't repay you by ruining your life. No, Vince said, leaning forward, intensity in his eyes. You are not leaving. I already said that. It's not your fault there are mean people in the world, and I'm not going to let Roger win. But how? asked Sarah. "How will you stop him from spreading rumors? How will you stop people from talking?" Vince remained silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low, hesitant. "There is a way," he said. Sarah waited. "Marry me," said Vince. The world stopped. Sarah was sure she had heard wrong. "What?" she managed to say. Vince ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "I know it sounds crazy," he said quickly. "I know we've known each other less than a month. I know you were married before and it went wrong. I know I still wear my late wife's ring." He paused, took a deep breath. "But think with me. If we get married, no one can say anything. You'd be my wife for real, legally. The kids would have a father, at least on paper, and Roger couldn't use our situation against me." Sarah couldn't process what she was hearing. Marriage. Vince was proposing marriage, but what kind of marriage would this be? "Are you talking about a real marriage?" she asked cautiously. "Or just a marriage on paper?" Vince looked at her, and Sarah saw conflict in his eyes. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "I haven't loved anyone besides Gabrielle, and I don't know if I can love again. But I like you. I respect you. I admire your strength, how you take care of your children, how hard you work. You brought life back to this house. And I don't want you to leave," he continued. "I'm not asking you to love me, not now, maybe never, but I'm offering security, a name, protection, for you and for the kids. The farm would be yours too. If something happens to me, you'd inherit everything. The children would have a guaranteed future, and you'd never have to sleep in the square again, never have to beg for a roof, never have to feel afraid of being thrown away." Tears came to Sarah's eyes without asking permission. It was too generous an offer, too great a sacrifice. Vince barely knew her. Why would he do this? As if reading the unasked question, Vince spoke. "Because you remind me that I'm still human," he said softly. "Because your children remind me that life goes on even after death. Because this house is alive again, and I don't want to go back to living like a ghost. And because, selfishly, I don't want to be alone forever." Sarah wiped her tears, trying to think rationally. It was a practical proposal, not romantic, not passionate, but honest. A marriage of convenience that would benefit both. She would have the security she never had. The children would have a father, a home, a future. Vince would have companionship, help, a reason to move forward. It made sense, but her heart, so bruised by Robert, screamed caution. Could she trust? Could she risk it again? "I need time to think," she said finally. Vince nodded. "Of course," he said. "You don't have to decide now. Think calmly. But know that the offer is sincere. I wouldn't propose if I weren't serious." Sarah got up, went to her room, lay down beside the children but didn't sleep. She thought the entire night. By morning, she had a decision. She went down to the kitchen where Vince was already having coffee. He looked at her expectantly, but didn't ask. Sarah poured coffee for herself, sat opposite him. "I accept," she said, "but with conditions." Vince waited. "I want a real marriage," she said. "I don't want to be just a wife on paper. I want to try to build something real, even if it takes time, even if it's hard. Because if I'm going to get married again, I want it to mean something." Vince seemed surprised. "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded. "I am. You offered me security, protection, a future. That is more than any other man has offered. But I offer something too. I offer loyalty, companionship, family, and the possibility that, with time, we can be truly happy. You deserve to be happy again, Vince, and I deserve it too." Vince stayed in a long silence. Then he extended his hand across the table. Sarah took it. "Deal," he said. "Let's get married, and let's make it work." Sarah smiled, her first genuine smile of hope in a long time. "Deal," she repeated. They married 2 weeks later. A simple ceremony at the church in Oak Creek, just Pastor Williams, Hank, Martha, and a few close folks. Tommy and Lily stood as improvised ring-bearers, confused but happy in new clothes. Sarah wore a simple light blue dress that Martha had helped make. Vince had taken off Gabrielle's ring for the first time in 3.5 years, replacing it with a new band he bought for both of them. When Pastor Williams declared them husband and wife, Vince kissed Sarah on the cheek, a chaste but respectful gesture, a promise of a future not yet defined but possible. There was a small party at the farm. Martha made food. Hank played his acoustic guitar. The children ran around the yard, and for the first time since Gabrielle had died, Clearwater Farm had the sound of joy. But the joy was short-lived. 3 days after the wedding, Roger returned. This time he wasn't alone. He brought a lawyer, a man in a grey suit with a leather briefcase. "Vince, we need to talk," Roger said without greeting. "About documents." Vince crossed his arms. "What documents?" The lawyer opened the briefcase, pulled out papers. "Mr. Turner," he said in a professional voice, "my client has proof that there are unpaid debts related to this property, debts you inherited from your late father-in-law. If they are not settled, the property may be auctioned for payment." Vince took the papers, read them with an increasingly dark expression. "This is a lie," he said. "My father-in-law had no debts. He died 10 years ago. Everything was settled back then." The lawyer shrugged. "The documents here suggest otherwise," he said. "Signed promissory notes with accumulated interest, a total of $60,000. Vince looked at Roger. "You forged this," he accused. Roger raised his hands. "Me? I'm just trying to help. These debts are legitimate. They were forgotten, but someone found them. Now they need to be paid, unless, of course, you sell the property. With the sale value, you pay the debts and still have money left over." Vince crumpled the papers in anger. "I'm going to contest this," he said. "I'm going to prove it's fraud." The lawyer smiled. "Feel free," he said. "But while the process runs, the lien on the property remains valid. You have 30 days to pay, or the farm goes to auction. Good day." And they left. Vince stood still, holding the crumpled papers, face pale. Sarah approached. "Is this serious?" Vince nodded. "If it's true, yes. $60,000 is more than I have. I'd have to sell all the cattle, and it still wouldn't be enough. But if it's not true," Vince looked at her, "then I have to prove it, and fast." The following days were a nightmare. Vince hired his own lawyer, began searching for his father-in-law's old documents. Sarah helped however she could, taking care of the house, keeping the children calm, trying to maintain some normality while the world collapsed around them. Vince stayed up late, eyes red, studying papers, doing math, looking for a way out. But the more they investigated, the more complicated it got. Roger's documents looked legitimate on the surface, signatures that looked real, dates that made sense, witnesses who confirmed it was either real ruin or a very well-executed fraud. And even proving it was fraud would take months, time Vince didn't have. A week before the deadline, Vince was on the verge of collapse. Sarah found him in the office, head in his hands, surrounded by papers. "Vince," she said softly. He looked up, eyes hopeless. "I'm going to lose the farm," he said. "Everything my father built, everything Gabrielle loved, everything I promised to protect. I'm going to lose it." Sarah knelt beside him, took his hands in hers. "You haven't lost it yet," she said firmly. "We still have a week. We'll find a way." Vince shook his head. "There is no way, Sarah. I don't have $60,000, and even selling everything I can't raise it. Unless—" He stopped. "Unless what?" asked Sarah. Vince looked at her. "Unless I sell the farm to Roger for the price he wants to pay, which won't be fair, but at least it clears the debts." "No," Sarah said immediately. "You're not going to do that. You're not going to let him win. There has to be another way." "But what?" asked Vince tiredly. Sarah thought fast, desperately. Then she remembered. Pastor Williams. Vince said the pastor had known the family for decades. Maybe he knew something, had a document, testimony, anything that could help. Vince looked at her as if seeing light for the first time in days. Pastor Williams, he repeated. He was there when my father-in-law died. He helped with the probate. If there's anything wrong with those documents, he would know. He got up so fast, the chair fell over. Let's go there now. The two went to town, leaving the children with Martha. Pastor Williams received them at the parsonage, face concerned upon seeing their expressions. My children, what happened? Vince explained everything, the debts, the documents, the threat of auction, Roger. The pastor listened to everything, getting paler by the minute. When Vince finished, Pastor Williams sighed deeply. I feared this would happen, he said. Roger came looking for me months ago, asking questions about your father-in-law's inheritance. I didn't give him information because I didn't think it was right, but I sensed he was plotting something. Vince leaned forward. Pastor, you were there when my father-in-law died. Do you know if he had debts? The pastor shook his head firmly. He didn't. Your father-in-law was an honorable man. He died without owing a penny to anyone. I attested to that personally in the estate settlement. Then those documents are fake, said Sarah. The pastor agreed. Must be, but proving that is hard. He thought for a moment. Wait, he said, standing up. I have something that might help. He went to an old filing cabinet in the corner of the room, searched through yellowed folders, found one, brought it over. Here, he said, opening it. Copy of your father-in-law's final estate settlement, official document, signed by me, by the notary, by the family. It clearly shows there were no outstanding debts when he died. Vince took the document with trembling hands. This proves Roger is lying, he said. Pastor Williams nodded. It does. But you're going to need a good lawyer, and you're going to need to file a complaint for fraud. It won't be easy. Roger has money, connections. He can drag this out for a long time. Vince guarded the document as if it were gold. Doesn't matter how long it takes, he said. I'm going to fight. This farm is mine, and no one is taking it. They returned to the farm with renewed hope. Vince took the documents to his lawyer, who was excited by the evidence. They filed a lawsuit contesting the debts, proving fraud, formally accusing Roger. The judge, upon seeing the evidence, temporarily suspended the auction until the case was resolved. Roger was furious. He showed up at the farm, shouting, threatening, saying Vince would regret it. Vince wasn't shaken. I have proof you forged documents, he said calmly. You're going to answer for this in court. And if you step on my property again uninvited, I'm calling the sheriff for trespassing. Now get out. The legal process lasted 3 months. 3 months of tension, hearings, depositions. Pastor Williams testified. Hank testified. Documents were examined by experts who confirmed the forgery. In the end, the judge's decision was clear. The debts were fraudulent. Roger was convicted of document forgery and attempted extortion. He had to pay a heavy fine and was slapped with a restraining order to stay away from Vince and the farm. When Vince returned from the final hearing with the news, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He came in, picked her up without warning, spun her around. We won, he said, laughing for the first time since it all started. The farm is ours. It's safe. Sarah hugged him tight, feeling relief so great her legs almost gave out. Thank God, she whispered. Thank God. That night, there was a celebration. Hank and Martha came. The children stayed up late. They ate, drank, laughed. Vince played the acoustic guitar that Sarah didn't know he knew how to play. She danced with Tommy. Martha danced with Hank. It was pure joy, untainted by fear or worry for the first time in months. Late at night, when everyone had gone and the children slept, Vince and Sarah stayed on the porch looking at the stars. Thank you, Vince said suddenly. Sarah looked at him. For what? For not giving up on me, he said. For staying through all this. for being strong when I couldn't be, for reminding me to go to the pasture. You saved this farm just as much as I did." Sarah took his hand. "We're family now," she said. "That's what family does. Supports, fights together." Vince looked at her, and Sarah saw something different in his eyes, something warmer, deeper. "Sarah," he said softly, "can I kiss you for real?" Her heart sped up. "You can," she replied, and he kissed her. Not a chaste kiss on the cheek like at the wedding. A real kiss, deep, full of held-back emotion, hope, new beginnings. Sarah kissed back, feeling something inside her thaw, heal, open up to the possibility of loving again. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Vince said, looking into her eyes. Sarah smiled. "Me too," she admitted. "I didn't know if it was possible after everything I went through. But it is, and I'm happy it's with you." Vince hugged her, rested his chin on her head. "Let's make this work," he promised. "You, me, the kids. Let's be a real family." Sarah believed him. For the first time in a long time, she believed in the future. 6 months had passed since the wedding. 6 months since the victory against Roger. 6 months since that kiss on the porch that had changed everything between Vince and Sarah. Clearwater Farm was transformed. It was March 1979, and the winter was ending, giving way to a wet spring that left everything green, vibrant, alive. Sarah's garden now produced more than the family could consume. She sold the surplus at the Oak Creek Farmers Market every Saturday, and the extra money helped with small improvements on the farm. The chickens had doubled in number, the cattle were fat, healthy, and the house, once so silent and sad, was now always full of sounds. Children's laughter, conversation between Vince and Sarah, music on the old kitchen radio, life. Sarah woke up that Thursday morning feeling something different. It wasn't exactly sickness, but a strange sensation in her stomach she couldn't identify. She got up slowly so as not to wake Vince, who still slept beside her. Since that kiss, they shared the same room. It had been a natural transition, unhurried, respectful. First nights just sleeping together, talking in the dark about dreams, fears, the past, the future. Then, slowly, physical intimacy had emerged too. Gentle, careful, built on trust that grew day by day. She went to the bathroom, washed her face with cold water, looked at herself in the mirror. She was different from the woman who had slept in the square 8 months ago. Her face had gained color, health. Her eyes no longer held that shadow of permanent despair. Her body was fuller, properly nourished. And there was something else. A glow. Happiness, maybe. The nausea came suddenly. Sarah barely made it to the toilet. Vomited everything in her stomach, which wasn't much because she had eaten little for dinner the night before. When she finished, she sat on the bathroom floor, breathing deeply, waiting for the world to stop spinning. And then she realized, counted mentally, when was her last period? January, late January, it was March. She had skipped February entirely. How had she not noticed before? But she knew how. She had been so busy, so involved in the farm routine, so happy finally, that she hadn't paid attention to her own body's signals. Pregnant. She was pregnant. The thought brought a wave of emotion so strong she had to hold on to the sink. Fear, joy, terror, hope, everything at once overwhelming. She was pregnant by Vince. They were going to have a child together, a child who would be a sibling to Tommy and Lily, a child who would fill that nursery that was still closed on the second floor. But what if something went wrong? What if she lost it, like Gabrielle had? What if the birth was complicated? What if Vince got scared, traumatized? What if this destroyed what they were building? "Sarah, you okay?" Vince's voice on the other side of the door pulled her out of her spiral of thoughts. She got up quickly, washed her face again, rinsed her mouth, opened the door. Vince was standing there, hair messy with sleep, worry on his face. "Heard you getting sick," he said. You ill? Sarah looked at him, at this man who had become her husband for real, her partner, her love, and decided she wasn't going to hide it. Not from him. Not now. Vince, she said, taking his hands. I think I'm pregnant. The whole world seemed to stop. Vince stood completely still, not breathing, just looking at her. Sarah saw shock, fear, and then something else, something like wonder. Pregnant, he repeated, as if not sure he heard right. Are you sure? I'm not absolutely sure, admitted Sarah, but all the signs are there. Missed period, morning sickness, fatigue. I've been through this twice. I recognize it. Vince pulled her into a hug so tight it almost knocked the wind out of her. Sarah, he whispered against her hair, voice choked up. We're gonna have a child. She felt him trembling, felt his tears wet her shoulder. Vince was crying with joy, with fear, with overflowing emotion. They stood there hugging in the hallway for a long time, just feeling the moment, the enormity of what was happening. Finally, Vince pulled away, wiped his eyes without shame. Sorry, he said, smiling through the tears. It's just, after Gabrielle, I thought I never... He stopped, couldn't continue. Sarah touched his face. I know, she said gently, but now you will. We will. And it's gonna work out. Everything's gonna be okay. Vince nodded, wanting to believe. Need to go to the doctor, he said practically all of a sudden. Today, I'll take you to town. Sarah laughed at his enthusiasm. Okay, she said, but first let me have coffee. And tell the kids. Tommy and Lily were eating oatmeal in the kitchen when they came down. The children had adapted completely to life on the farm. Tommy, now 7, was a strong boy, tanned by the sun, always following Vince through the pastures, learning about cattle, horses, land. He spoke with a country twang he didn't have before, called Vince Dad without anyone asking, had simply started naturally 3 months ago. Lily, 4 years old, was the princess of the farm. Spoiled by everyone, especially Martha. Loved animals, spent hours in the chicken coop talking to the hens as if they answered back. Kids, said Sarah, sitting at the table with them, I have news to tell you. Tommy looked up from his toast and jelly. What news? Sarah looked at Vince, who nodded encouragingly. You're going to have a little brother, she said. Or sister. We don't know yet. But there's a baby growing here in Mommy's belly. Lily widened her eyes. Baby? She asked, putting her hand on Sarah's still flat stomach. In there? Sarah smiled. That's right, in there. In a few months the baby will be born, and you can meet him. Tommy was quiet, processing. Then he asked, Is he gonna be our real brother, or half-brother, 'cause the dad is Vince, right? It was a complicated question for a 7-year-old. Sarah chose her words carefully. He's gonna be your real brother, she said. Same mom, different dad, but full brother. And Vince is your dad too now. Doesn't matter if he wasn't the one who made you be born. He takes care of you, loves you. That makes him a father. Tommy thought about that, then looked at Vince. Are you my real dad? Asked the boy. Vince sat beside Tommy, put a hand on the boy's shoulder. I am if you want me to be, he said sincerely. I love you and your sister as if you were my blood. And I'm gonna love this baby too, all the same, all my kids. Tommy smiled, a big smile that lit up his whole face. Then yeah, he said, you're my dad, and I want to have a brother. It's gonna be cool. Lily clapped excitedly. I'm gonna teach the baby to get eggs, she announced, and talk to chickens. Vince and Sarah laughed, the tension of the moment dissolving into family joy. Can we tell Aunt Martha? Asked Lily. Sarah agreed. You can go tell her yes. The kids ran out, leaving Vince and Sarah alone. They looked at each other across the table. Are you scared? Asked Sarah. Vince thought before answering. I am, he admitted, scared of what can go wrong. But I'm also happy, happier than I thought I could be again. Sarah reached out her hand. He took it. "We're going to make it work," she said, with a conviction she felt in the depths of her soul. "This baby will be born healthy. I'll be fine. You'll be fine. And our family will grow." They went to the doctor in town that same afternoon. Dr. Roberts, a man in his 50s who practiced in a modest office on Main Street, examined Sarah and confirmed it. "Pregnant about 6 weeks," he said. "Everything looks good so far. Uterus the expected size, blood pressure good, strong heart. We'll need to do monthly checkups, and towards the end, if there are complications, you'll need to go to the hospital in the bigger city. Here we don't have the setup for difficult births." Vince went pale. "What kind of complications?" he asked. The doctor looked at Sarah. "She's already had 2 natural births," Sarah confirmed. "Tommy and Lily, no complications at all." The doctor nodded. "Then chances are good this one will be smooth too. But with your family history, Vince, we know sometimes things happen, so we'll watch closely. Do everything right. Don't worry before it's time." But Vince worried. Sarah saw it in his eyes. Saw how he watched her constantly, checking if she was okay, if she wasn't too tired, too sick, working too hard. He forbade her from carrying heavy things, forbade her from climbing ladders, almost forbade her from doing anything. Sarah had to sit him down one night and explain that pregnancy wasn't a disease, that she was fine, that she needed to keep living normally. The months passed. Sarah's belly grew. April, May, June. Winter arrived again in her memory, but outside it was summer, completing the 1-year cycle since that cold night in the square. Sarah sometimes stopped and thought about how everything had changed. A year ago she was desperate, homeless, hopeless. Now she was pregnant, married, living on a beautiful farm, with a family she loved. It seemed like a miracle, seemed impossible, but it was real. Vince continued to worry, but slowly relaxed as he saw Sarah was truly fine. The doctor repeated at every appointment that everything was progressing perfectly. Baby growing at the right pace, strong heartbeat, Sarah gaining appropriate weight, no signs of trouble. If this story is touching your heart, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share with someone you love. In August, when Sarah was 7 months along, something happened that tested the strength of the family they had built once more. Robert returned. Sarah was at the farmer's market selling vegetables from the garden when she saw him, standing on the other side of the square, looking at her, thinner, bearded, shabby clothes. But it was him. Unmistakable, the man who had abandoned her and the children, who had stolen her savings, who had caused all the suffering. The world tilted. Sarah froze, unable to move, just staring. Robert started walking toward her, slowly, hesitantly, like someone approaching an animal that might attack. Sarah finally managed to move, turned to the woman at the stall next to her. "Mrs. Gable, can you watch my things for a moment?" she asked. "I need to leave now." Mrs. Gable, seeing the panic on her face, agreed. "Go, honey." Sarah started walking fast in the opposite direction of Robert, but he caught up to her, grabbed her arm. "Sarah," he called, "please, I just want to talk." Sarah pulled away violently. "Don't touch me," she hissed. Robert raised his hands. Okay. "I won't touch. Just listen. Please." People were starting to look. Sarah didn't want a scene. Took a deep breath, tried to calm down. "What do you want, Robert?" she asked with a hard voice. Robert looked at her, at the big belly, obvious even under the loose dress. "You're pregnant," he said stupidly. "Whose is it?" Rage exploded in Sarah. "Whose is it?" she repeated incredulously. "You abandon me, disappear for more than a year, and want to know whose child this is? That is none of your business. It's not yours. That's all you need to know." Robert seemed to shrink. "I know I messed everything up," he said, voice low. "I know I have no excuse, but I came back. I want to fix things. I want to see Tommy and Lily. I want—" "No," Sarah cut him off. "You're not going to see them. You're not going to get near them. You lost that right when you ran away and left us in misery. Do you know where I ended up? Do you know what I went through? Sleeping in the square, Robert, with our children, in the square, because you left us with nothing. The tears came, tears of anger, not sadness. You almost destroyed us, almost killed us, and now you show up here wanting to fix it. There is no fixing. There is only you leaving and never coming back, Robert tried again. Sarah, I was in trouble. I owed dangerous people. I had to run. But now, I don't want to hear it, interrupted Sarah. I don't care about your reasons. I rebuilt my life. I married again. A good man, a worker who takes care of me and the kids like you never did. They have a father now, a real father. You are nothing to us. And if you try to get close to my children, I'm calling the police, understand? Robert looked at her with an expression Sarah couldn't identify. Sadness? Remorse? It didn't matter. He nodded slowly. Understood, he said. Sorry. Sorry for everything. And he walked away, disappearing among the people at the market. Sarah stood there, trembling, the baby kicking hard inside her, as if feeling the stress. Mrs. Gable appeared at her side. You all right, honey? Sarah shook her head. I need to go home, she said. Mrs. Gable helped pack up the things, called Vince, who was on the other side of the square selling a calf. Vince came running when he saw Sarah's expression. What happened? He asked, alarmed. Robert, Sarah managed to say. He came back. He showed up here. Vince went rigid. Where is he? Sarah held his arm. He's gone already. I told him to leave. Said if he gets near the kids, I'm calling the sheriff. Vince hugged her. You did the right thing, he said. He has no rights over you. Let's go home. You need to rest. They returned to the farm in silence. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Robert. Part of her, a small part she hated to admit existed, had felt something seeing him. Not love. That had died completely, but memory, maybe, of what they had been before everything fell apart, of the man she thought he was. But that man had never really existed. It was an illusion. Vince was real. The love she had for Vince was real, solid, built on concrete things like trust, respect, partnership. That night, lying in bed, Vince held Sarah while she cried. She didn't cry for Robert. She cried for the lost time, for the years wasted with the wrong man, for the suffering that could have been avoided. Vince just held her, let her release everything, didn't try to comfort with empty words, just was present. It was all Sarah needed. When she finally stopped crying, Vince asked quietly, Do you still feel something for him? Sarah answered without hesitation. Nothing, she said with absolute certainty. Just anger for everything he did. And a strange gratitude, too. Because if he hadn't abandoned me, I never would have come here, never would have met you, never would have this life. So in a twisted way, him being horrible brought me to you, to us. Vince kissed her forehead. I love you, he said. No matter what happens, what shows up from the past, I love you and I'm gonna protect you and our kids. All of them. Sarah snuggled closer. I love you too, she said. And for the first time I believe love can last. That it won't disappear. That it's real. Robert didn't return. Rumors circulated in town that he had shown up, caused a scene at the market, and then disappeared again. Some people commented, judged. There were always those who judged. But Sarah didn't care. She had a family that supported her. Had Vince, had a place, had love. Gossip couldn't touch that. September came. October. Sarah was huge, uncomfortable, anxious for the baby to be born already. Vince was more nervous than she was. Constantly checked if the truck had gas for an emergency. Had a route planned to the hospital in the big city just in case. Had a bag packed with clothes, documents, everything they might need. On November 3rd, 1979, at 2 in the morning, Sarah woke up with contractions, not the false ones she had felt in the last few weeks. These were real, strong, regular. "Vince," she called, touching his shoulder. "Wake up. It's time." Vince woke up instantly, jumped out of bed. "Now! Now!" Sarah laughed, despite the pain. "Now," she confirmed. "We're having a baby today." Vince woke Martha, who had agreed to stay with Tommy and Lily during the birth, helped Sarah get dressed, grabbed the bag, took her to the truck. It was still dark when they left the farm, headlights cutting through the night. The trip to the city took 40 minutes that seemed eternal. Sarah breathed through the contractions, trying not to panic. Vince drove fast but carefully, holding her hand with one hand while steering with the other. They arrived at the hospital at 3:15. Staff was waiting, doctor already notified. Took Sarah to the delivery room. Vince stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping sweat, whispering encouragement. The hours passed, 4 in the morning, 5, 6, long labor, painful, exhausting, but without complications. Everything progressing normally, said the doctor. At 7:32 in the morning of November 3rd, 1979, with the sun already high outside, the baby was born. A boy, crying, strong, healthy, perfect. The doctor cleaned him, cut the cord, placed him on Sarah's chest. "Congratulations," he said, smiling. "Beautiful, strong boy." Sarah looked at her son, so small, so perfect, and felt a love so immense it didn't fit in her chest. Vince was crying openly, without shame, looking at his son with an expression of absolute wonder. "Can I hold him?" he asked with a choked voice. "Of course," said Sarah. "He's your son too." Vince took the baby with reverent care, as if holding the most precious thing in the world. And it was. The baby stopped crying, opened dark little eyes, looked at his father. Vince made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Hi, son," he whispered. "I'm your daddy, and I promise I'm gonna take care of you, gonna protect you, gonna love you every day of your life. You and your brother and sister and your mom, you are my family, my whole life." Sarah watched her husband hold their son and thought that finally, she had found what she was looking for her whole life without knowing. It wasn't just security or a roof or food, although those things were important. It was belonging. It was true love. It was chosen family, built, fought for. It was second chances. It was transformation. They named the baby Gabriel. Gabriel Turner. A name that honored Vince's first wife without chaining her to the past. Gabriel had been the name Vince and Gabriel had chosen for the son who didn't survive. Vince asked Sarah if she minded using it. Sarah said no. It was a way to honor memory, to incorporate the past into the present, to show that love doesn't die. It just transforms. They returned to the farm 3 days later. Martha had decorated the whole house with blue ribbons, prepared food for a whole week. Tommy and Lily exploded with excitement meeting their little brother. Tommy held Gabriel with excessive care, as if he would break. Lily wanted to kiss him 1,000 times. The children were in love, and Vince finally opened the nursery that had been closed for almost 5 years, removed everything that had belonged to the Gabriel who wasn't born, stored it with respect, but stored it, then renovated the room completely, painted it again, put in new furniture, transformed it into a space for this new Gabriel. Not a sanctuary of the past. It was liberation. It was healing. It was moving forward, without forgetting, but also without being trapped. The following months were an adjustment. Newborn baby is hard work. Gabriel woke up every 3 hours to nurse. Sarah was exhausted but happy. Vince helped with everything he could, changed diapers, rocked him when Sarah needed sleep, cooked, cleaned. Tommy and Lily helped the way kids help. More hindering than helping, but with intentions so good it didn't matter. The farm kept running. Vince hired another hand to help Hank, because he needed to spend more time near the house, helping Sarah with the baby. Money was tight, but they managed. They had enough, and enough was more than most had. Gabriel grew fast, smiling, then laughing, then crawling. The house was alive in a way it had never been. Noise of baby crying, laughing, babbling, older kids playing, fighting, making messes, Sarah cooking, singing while she worked, Vince coming back from the pastures and being greeted by children running to hug him. It was daily life. It was ordinary. It was perfect. 1 year after Gabriel's birth in November 1980, eve of his first birthday, the whole family was on the porch watching the sunset. Tommy was 8, Lily 5, Gabriel 1. Vince and Sarah sitting side by side, Gabriel in her lap, other children playing on the lawn. Sky painted orange, pink, purple. Perfect autumn temperature. Sound of cricket starting. Absolute peace. Vince looked at Sarah. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. Sarah smiled. "Very," she replied. "More than I thought I could be." "And you?" Vince thought, looking at everything around. The farm, the children, the woman he loved, the life he had rebuilt from the ashes. "Yes," he said finally. "Very happy. Gabriel would be happy for me too. I know she would. She would want me to move on, to be happy again. And I am." Sarah held his hand. "Want to know what I think happened?" she said. Vince waited. "I think I was meant to arrive in that square. Meant to be desperate that night, because only then would you see me, only then would we meet. Sometimes the worst moment of our life is what leads to the best. We just don't know it at the time." Vince agreed. "You're right," he said. "If you hadn't been evicted, if Robert hadn't run off, if all those bad things hadn't happened, you never would have come here. And I would still be alone, dead inside, trapped in the past. You saved me just as much as I saved you." They stayed in silence, just appreciating the moment. Then Vince spoke again. "Know what's funny?" he said. "What?" asked Sarah. "When I stopped in that square, when I saw you there with the kids, I had no plan. Didn't think I was going to marry you or have a son with you or anything like that. Just thought I couldn't let you sleep on the ground one more night. That was all. A simple gesture. And it changed everything." Sarah looked at him. "Sometimes kindness changes everything," she said. "Sometimes a single person deciding to do the right thing is all it takes to change a whole life. You were that person for me, and I hope to be that person for someone someday too. Show my kids that we help who needs it always, because it could be you needing it tomorrow, and you'll want someone to stop." Vince kissed her. A soft kiss, full of accumulated love. Tommy made a sound of disgust. "Gross!" shouted the boy. "You guys are kissing all the time," Lily laughed. "When I grow up, I'm going to get married too," she announced, "and I'm going to kiss a lot." Gabriel, understanding nothing, just laughed at his sister. The whole family laughed, a light, happy, perfect moment. Sarah looked around, memorizing every detail. The children, Vince, the farm, the sky, everything, wanted to remember that forever. The moment when she finally was absolutely sure she was home. Not home as a physical place, home as a feeling, as belonging, as being loved, as being safe. Life continued its rhythm. Years passed. Tommy grew up, became a strong young man who helped Vince in the pastures, who talked about studying veterinary medicine, taking care of animals professionally. Lily became a sweet but firm girl who took care of the garden with a dedication Sarah never had, who transformed that piece of earth into a productive and beautiful garden. Gabriel grew up as a perfect mix of his parents, had Sarah's gentleness, Vince's strength, was joyful, curious, kind. Sarah and Vince grew old together. Hair turned grey, wrinkles appeared, bodies got slower, but love only grew. They became that kind of couple who knows each other so well they don't even need to speak to understand, who finish each other's sentences, who have decades-old inside jokes, who know exactly when the other needs a hug or space or coffee. Clearwater Farm prospered. Vince never sold, even when good offers appeared. That land was his, Sarah's, the children's. It was a legacy. It was home. When Vince was 70 and Sarah 61, they transferred most of the management to Tommy, who had returned to the farm after becoming a vet. Lily had married, lived in town, but visited always. Gabriel was still in college, studying agronomy, with plans to come back and modernize operations. One afternoon in November, many years after that night in the square, Vince and Sarah were sitting on the wide wooden porch swing, watching the winter sun set behind the hills. The cold that year was rigorous, almost as much as that one in 1978. But there, wrapped in wool blankets and with mugs of steaming coffee in their hands, the cold wasn't a threat. It was just scenery. Vince held Sarah's hand. The skin of both was marked by time, with sunspots and visible veins, maps of a whole life of hard work and dedication. He looked at his wristwatch, an old model Gabriel had restored as a gift for his father. 3:20 in the morning, murmured Vince, remembering the exact time. That was the time I stopped the truck. Sarah squeezed his hand, eyes watery, but with a serene smile on her lips. I thought it was an angel or a robber, she laughed, voice a little weaker but still full of that sweetness that had conquered the house decades ago. Ended up being the love of my life. And there on that porch, warmed by the love they planted against all odds, Sarah and Vince proved that no matter how cold the night, the sun always rises for those who have the courage to accept an outstretched hand. Where before there were only two broken people and two cold children, now existed a dynasty of love, a fortress that no winter could ever tear down. And you? Do you believe destiny puts the right people in our path in the hardest hours? This story of Sarah and Vince is proof that good exists and that new beginnings are possible, no matter the size of the pain. If you made it to the end and were moved by this journey, write here in the comments, Love One. Don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel for more true stories that touch the soul, and share this video with whoever needs a hug for their heart today. Stay blessed and see you in the next story.